So I've been watching a bunch of Kaiju number 8 recently, and I've even made a full Barbarian subclass over on the main channel based on Kafka and his Kaiju form. And that of course got me thinking, without any homebrew or anything like that, how would you make a character that still feels like you're playing Kafka? And the answer turned out to be a bit more complex than I originally thought, since we're actually kind of building two characters here. Also, if you do like these kind of videos, make sure to subscribe. It helps out a ton, and we are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, because this is a lot of work, especially when I am making the homebrew, building the characters, writing, recording, and editing everything all myself. So yeah, it would be really appreciated if you subscribed, liked the video, all that YouTube stuff. As for our rules, very simply, we are using the standard point array for stats, 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. And as long as what I'm looking for is in an official, published Wizards of the Coast book, I can use it. Okay, let's get into it.
Examinee number 2032, Kafka Hibino. Remember the name, aye little missy.
Kafka Hibino grew up in a version of Japan that is constantly under the attack of giant monsters called Kaiju. And him, along with his childhood friend Mina, swore to one day join the Kaiju Defense Force and fight Kaiju side by side. Unfortunately for Kafka, while Mina quickly grew to the ranks of a captain, Kafka wasn't even able to pass the entrance exams. Constantly trying year after year, and even on the rare times when he made it past the initial test, he always flunked out of the physical exams. Unfortunately, Kafka couldn't do this forever, as he eventually became too old to join and resigned himself to working for the Kaiju disposal company, Monster Sweepers Inc., where he would sift through the remains of the Kaijus killed by the Self-Defense Force, and often by his childhood friend Mina herself. But 2 years after Kafka gave up, the age restriction on joining the Self-Defense Force was lifted, becoming 32 years old, giving Kafka one more chance. He was immediately attacked by a Kaiju literally moments after figuring out that he could apply again, but this ended up being a bit of a blessing in disguise, as after this encounter, Kafka ended up in the hospital, where he had another run-in with a Kaiju, although this one was a lot smaller, and seemingly not as mindless. Not that we have a lot of information to go off of, because this small Kaiju immediately threw itself down Kafka's throat and merged with him. And after a few short moments of agonizing pain, Kafka had a brand new Kaiju body. And while it did take Kafka some time to get used to this new body and its unique features, he quickly found out just how powerful this was. With one punch, he was able to turn a building-sized Kaiju into nothing but meat slurry. It was also somewhere around this time that Kafka decided he would use these powers to fight Kaiju and join the Kaiju Defense Force. Now, originally I had written out and even recorded this whole bit about building two characters, having the human Kafka and the Kaiju Kafka. But really, it wasn't working. The human Kafka was just going to be 3 levels of Ranger, going with the Monster Slayer subclass, and that was it. Like, human Kafka he's a great character. I love the character that is Kafka, but he's kind of worthless in a fight in his human form. So, that part's getting thrown out. So instead, we are just going to focus on the Kaiju form. So after Kafka got his Kaiju powers, a lot changed for him. So let's take a look at what he's able to do in that form and see what we've got to work with. So, first off, punching. Everyone else has guns or weapons of some sort, and sure, Kafka does have standard issue guns from the Kaiju Defense Force, but he does not use them in his Kaiju form. He just throws hands. He's incredibly fast, especially compared to his human form, can jump at least several stories into the air if this scene is anything to go by, and even when only partially transformed, was able to lift an entire van. Kafka buddy, you better have transformed your spine too. You better not have just transformed your arms and snapped your spine in half picking up that van. Jokes aside, Kafka's body is ridiculously durable now, and he punches so hard that he has to anchor himself in the ground to not get blasted back by the force of them. Also, sometimes the inner Kaiju can take over and send him into a bloodthirsty rage where he can't control himself and almost kills people he really shouldn't almost kill. So, we have a very large boy who can punch really good, take a lot of damage, and sometimes rushes in without thinking because he literally can't think. Now, before we get to the huge mystery of what his primary class is going to be, I want to talk about Kafka's race stats, and background. First, his background. You've got two options. You can either go with a custom one for like the working man and take whatever skills you want. You also have the option of the soldier background, since he is an active member of the Kaiju Defense Force. Personally, I went with a custom one since he spent a lot more time working with Monster Sweepers Inc., but that isn't a huge deal. Either way, I ended up with athletics, survival, deception, and perception for his skills. His stats are pretty simple too: focus, strength, and con, decent wisdom and dexterity, okay intelligence, and dump charisma. Not that Kafka isn't a likable guy, he is hilarious and a silly middle-aged guy with a dad bod, but we don't need charisma here, and he is probably smarter when it comes to kaiju than he is charismatic. Now here's the fun part. When thinking about Kafka's race, lineage, species, whatever you want to call it, I had a thought. Kafka was clearly originally a human. Look, see? Human, not human. Human, not human. And there are only a few ways to transition from one species to another in D&D without the help of like the resurrection spell. You can die and become a reborn, have something similar happen to become a revenant, or you can be experimented on and become a simic hybrid, giving you monster-like abilities and features on what would have been a normal human body. Now this kaiju may not have been some weird experiment forced on Kafka, but it was definitely forced, and he definitely didn't end up the same as when it started. So for Kafka's race, I went with Simic Hybrid, taking the Nimble Climber feature for 1st level and the Carapace feature for 5th level, meaning he has a climbing speed equal to his walking speed, and he has a higher AC when not wearing armor. I had thought about going like Goliath or something, but Goliaths are always Goliaths. Simic hybrids are born as humans or elves or any other race, and they're forcefully turned into Simic hybrids via experimentation. And with those three things out of the way, we can now move on to the big surprise of what Kafka's class is going to be. I made a Barbarian subclass for the Kaiju. So Kafka is going to start off as a fighter. Specifically 3 levels of fighter, and more specifically 3 levels of Rune Knight fighter. And thankfully, none of the levels here are dead levels. Level 1 gives the unarmed fighting style and second wind for healing. 2nd level gives action surge, which, it's action surge, come on. And 3rd level comes with the features Rune Carver and Giant's Might. These 2 features are very important to the Kaiju transformation, with Rune Carver giving a bonus to strength and con saves via the Frost Rune, and the other rune really isn't as important, but I would personally take the Fire Rune for a little bit of extra fire damage on hit. What is really important here though is the 3rd level feature Giant's Might, which not only lets you become large for 1 minute, becoming more kaiju-like in size, but it also gives you 1d6 extra damage once per turn on a weapon or unarmed strike. And since we took the unarmed fighting style for 1d8 on every punch we make, we can now deal 1d8 plus 1d6 plus 3 for our strength modifier, just at 3rd level. Now unfortunately we are not going any further in fighter, so no extra attack, no ASIs, but we'll get all those from the next class. And big surprise, it's gonna be Barbarian. Because looking at this thing, punch a monster and have it go flying all the way across the city, does not scream anything except Barbarian. Now the question after that is what kind of Barbarian? There are a lot of different subclasses, and a couple of them could probably work. And the first Barbarian subclass to get kicked off the island is the Storm Herald. Maybe if Kafka was actively dangerous to be near when in his kaiju form, this would fit better, but unfortunately none of the features really have the flavor or mechanical aspects that we're looking for. And sadly, the same thing goes for the Beast Barbarian. Yes, it does have some of the themes down of turning into a more animalistic and feral side of yourself, but Kafka doesn't bite things, he doesn't grow claws, and he certainly doesn't have a tail. No, he just punches things into red mist. Which means Kafka Hibino is going to have 17 levels of Path of the Zealot Barbarian. So what does this get Kafka? Why did I go Path of the Zealot over something else? There are a few things I took into consideration, like Kafka's damage output and how tanky he is. And the first feature, Divine Fury, adds 1d6 plus half of your Barbarian level to the first attack you land on your turn. And notably, this can be radiant damage, which for certain monsters with regeneration radiant damage can cut off their regeneration until they don't take that damage again for one entire round. And when fighting number 9, Kafka's punches cause number 9's healing to significantly slow down, meaning his punches have this sort of effect on Kaiju. Warrior from the Dead isn't really important. If you die, you can get brought back without having to sacrifice a diamond. And I can see this as kind of being fitting, since you can really only kill Kafka if you also destroy his core. You could decapitate him, doesn't matter as long as his core is still intact. On top of the subclass features, Kafka also gets all the way up to level 17 for regular Barbarian stuff. That includes features like extra attack, fast movement, brutal critical 1, 2, and 3, relentless rage, and then finally, persistent rage. Also, even if his con and dex aren't amazing, he gets to add both of them to his AC, and he has that +1 from being a Simic hybrid. Also, the mix of a relentless rage and rage beyond death means you are going to be damn near impossible to kill while playing this character. Since the first few times you go down, you might just pass that saving throw with a decent con score, and when the enemies finally put you down for the 3rd or 4th time, it doesn't matter because Rage Beyond Death means even though you are unconscious and making death saving throws, you are still fighting. And Persistent Rage means your rage doesn't end until you decide it does or 1 minute has passed, giving you plenty of time to heal above 0 HP so you don't die. And on top of all the regular Barbarian stuff, Kafka also gets 4 ASIs, 2 of which are going to Strength, 1 to Con, and then 1 to take the Tough feat. Meaning all those con saves you're making for Relentless Rage every time you get hit while you're at 1 HP are going to be even easier. Now the one thing I regret is not being able to get Primal Champion, but that would have required no multiclassing, and then I wouldn't have been able to get the thing that makes you large. So it's a bit of a trade-off, but I think it's fine. So after 20 levels, this is what Kafka ends up with. First off, he has just around 260 hit points with median rolls, that's including Tough and a +4 Constitution. In one turn, including Action Surge, he can make 4 attacks, which each deal 1d8 +4. Now let's say the first attack you land on your turn is a crit. At this level, Kafka has 3 brutal critical die, meaning it is going to be 4d8 +5 for strength, plus 3d6 +8, for an average of 45 damage with that one hit. And with the other 3 attacks, including Action Surge, that is going to be an average of 75 damage in a round. Now that damage is far from amazing, but while you're chipping away at them, they're literally dealing no damage to you because you can't die, or you're already at 0 HP and it doesn't matter. And as long as you still have rages to continue raging with, which by the way you have 6 of at level 17, you're not gonna die. I'm telling you, Zealot Barbarian is kind of broken. Everyone gets on Totem Barbarian for having resistance to every damage, but who needs resistances when damage just straight up doesn't matter to you? Yeah, that attack dealt 300 damage. Doesn't matter, I was already at 0. Okay, he casts Finger of Death. Already dead, doesn't matter. And that will about do it. Thank you guys for watching until the end of the video. Leave any character requests or anything like that in the comments. And of course, I want to thank my testers and my patrons. I would have a bit of a longer outro, but I can feel my voice dying slowly as I record this. So that is going to do it for today. I will see you next week, and as always, have a wonderful day.